Welcome to the Southeastern 14 podcast. This is the Monday edition. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Barry Allen joins me today. Barry, we've got a ton of SEC baseball to talk. Hoover is upon us. We will be making our predictions for that in a moment. But first of all, big news across the SEC this weekend. Texas A&M has fired Coach Rob Childress in a move that I know that you were not totally caught off guard by.
No, and I hate it for Rob. He's a good guy, really good coach, and you can tell how much his players love and respect him by the tweets you saw yesterday from, Blake Alleman and Asa Lacy and others. Hunter Coleman's real emotional interview on the SEC network last night. Just, a really good guy. I mean, he'd been to the NCAA tournament 13 years in a row, and that's not good enough. Not in this league anymore. You missed a year.
The third longest streak in the country.
Yeah, behind Florida State and Vanderbilt. And, Rob, you went 29-22 this year, and you were last in the SEC West. And so your contract is up after this year, and so they don't renew it. And, tough decisions have to be made by these athletic directors. I mean, these coaches in this league, and it, football on down. If you don't win, you're not going to stay. And unfortunately, that's the business we're in now. And there may be others in the coming years that are facing the same situation that Rob Childress faced. Had a really good career as an assistant under Dave Van Horn, and went to Nebraska and did a nice job there. Had some really good teams at Nebraska, and then really did a great job at A&M. Made the tournament, SEC tournament every year they were in the league, and won the tournament one year. Been to Omaha, but bottom line for this year is 9-21 in the SEC, 13th overall and last in the SEC West. Just not enough to save Rob Childress at A&M this year.
Any idea where they go for a replacement?
Well, there's a lot of names floating around out there. Some interesting things, you read and see. Tim Tadlock comes to mind at Texas Tech. He's built a powerhouse in Lubbock. Not as difficult of a league to navigate as he would if he came to Texas A&M to be the coach there, but he would also have way more resources at Texas A&M than he has at Texas Tech. Another name that's kind of interesting is Cliff Godwin at East Carolina. He was at Ole Miss when Ross Bjork was the AD at Ole Miss. He was the associate head coach, recruiting coordinator, and third base coach for Mike Bianco for a long time. Left and took the job at East Carolina. They win the league. They win the American every year. They won it again this year. They've been to 2 super regionals. They're a base hit away in Lubbock 2 days in a row a couple of years ago from going to Omaha, and couldn't get the winning run in from second base in either inning. And then Texas Tech ended up winning both games and going to the World Series both years. So those are 2 guys that jump out. I've heard some things about Tony Vitello, A&M having some interest in him. Why wouldn't you? He's our coach of the year this year. Done a fantastic job at Tennessee. Took their program from nothing to the SEC East champions in just a couple of years, and that's a pretty good rise for a program that had laid dormant for a long, long time. So certainly, there are a lot of people going to be looking at him. I don't know exactly what his plans would be to leave Tennessee. I know A&M probably has better facilities in Tennessee. I know Tennessee's got some things on the drawing board, and he's won there with what he's got. What could he do if he had better facilities and certainly had a fan base this year, because they packed them in for the Arkansas and the Vanderbilt series. So those are a couple of names to keep an eye on, maybe for A&M. I don't know that they would go for a former Childress assistant, but Will Bolt's done a really nice job at Nebraska. They won the Big Ten this year, clinched the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. They don't have a tournament, and they played all Big Ten schedule this year. But he would be somebody that would draw some attention. I just don't know if Ross Bjork would. I just got rid of Rob Childress. I don't want to bring Rob Childress 2.0 in here, and so I don't know that that would be the timing would be right for Will Bolt, but he certainly would be on people's list for if he was looking to leave Nebraska and step up somewhere, maybe try to get back in the SEC, he would certainly be a name that was on the list. But, those are some of the names I've heard and, that you can think of that might be a good fit at Texas A&M.
I think the name to watch in coaching circles in the SEC this offseason is going to be Tony Vitello, because we don't know what's going to happen at LSU. There's been talk Paul Maneri could retire. I know that they're not thrilled with things, and Vitello is going to be the hot name probably in college baseball. Tennessee is a place that is not really committed to baseball in recent years. I think they've gotten smarter about that recently, or at least smarter in our minds. We're biased, and we admit it. But in any case, that is going to be the one that I'm watching, whether Tennessee can wrap him up or whether he will take advantage and hit a hot job with the great recruiting base, frankly, a better recruiting base than Tennessee, although there's a lot of talent in the mid-state around Tennessee, which is where I live. So there is that, but I'm very anxious to see how that resolves after the season, whether Tennessee keeps him, whether he takes another job, or whether maybe he holds out, say, for Arkansas, where he was an assistant for a while, if and when Dave Van Horn retires in the coming years.
Yeah, he's going to be a hot commodity. And I think one thing a couple of things that work against him at Tennessee is, one, the facilities and maybe the lack of commitment to the program. But, their weather's an issue too. I mean, it's, Knoxville's cold, and even in April. I laugh at people. The only time it ever snows in Texas is when the Cotton Bowl's played. Back when it was outside, now it doesn't matter. But there was never a time you're watching Lindsey Nelson and Roger Staubach do the Cotton Bowl on CBS, and it wasn't 14 below zero and snowing. And you go, well, we don't ever have that here. Why do they only have that in Dallas on New Year's Day? But it always seemed like that. But you'd think Texas weather's a little better. Obviously, A&M's facilities are better, and A&M's they've got resources that, most people don't have. Just all the Aggie money, all that Texas money and all that Aggie money and the tradition they have. And, so it'll be interesting to see, if the, Aggies come calling, or maybe LSU in a year or so, or, whoever. But I think he's definitely one of the hot commodities in coaching. And, my granddaddy was a smart man. He always said you got to strike while the irons are hot, because one day they're going to be cool and nobody's going to want you. So if you got to go, you got to go. And, this year or next year could be the years for Vitello to make that move at 42-14 and 20-10 and winning the East. And maybe he likes where he's at. And maybe he thinks, by golly, I'm going to win at Tennessee despite all this stuff. We're going to build facilities. We're going to have an elite program. We're going to have huge raucous crowds, and we're going to put people in the outfield like they do at Arkansas. We're going to build this facility, and by golly, we're going to win here. And, he may be that kind of guy too. And if he told me that, I'd believe him, because he's won already, and I wasn't sure that was going to happen. And they had a phenomenal year, and he deserves a lot of credit.
Let's talk some SEC storylines quickly before we go into predictions. Of course, hats off to Arkansas for winning the overall title, sweeping Florida, which continues just not to play well on the road. You've got Tennessee taking the SEC East. Vanderbilt had it in its grasp, and then a strike three call that Nick Maldonado at Vanderbilt thought was a strike three and wasn't. And that one turn of events, 5-run score for Kentucky from there on, as Kentucky takes one from Vanderbilt to really influence the SEC East, in fact, to determine it, as Vanderbilt winds up finishing second. But we just had lots of interesting storylines down the last weekend of baseball. What stood out to you the most, Barry?
Well, Arkansas, for one, best team. They were the best team in week 1, and they're the best team in week 10. And they're going to be the best team in Hoover, whether they win it or not. Just a resilient team all year long, always found a way to won every series. Only the 2013 Vanderbilt team won all 10 SEC series. That team went 26-3. But, this team kind of had to piecemeal the pitching together, it seemed like, most of the year. Powerful lineup with a lot of double-digit home runs and, a really, really good coach. I mean, Dave Van Horn's done it everywhere he's been, won everywhere he's been. He's got a national championship at Division II Central Missouri. And, Nebraska was garbage when he took over there. And, they go to Omaha several years in a row. And that was a that was just an unbelievable experience. I was there both years. They were there with him. You couldn't get a ticket for the Nebraska games. I mean, they're lined up outside at 7 a.m. for a 7 o'clock Nebraska game. And people are going, you in line? Yeah, for the Nebraska game. Oh, so I'm going in this one? Yeah, we don't care about this game. I mean, you're like, okay. So you just cut line because all these people are lined up. I mean, he took Nebraska, who'd never won, and then Rob Childress took it over. But, just a really good coach and always has his teams ready to play. And this was a really good team this year. And it's 11:51 a.m. Friday night, or 51 p.m. Friday night, almost Saturday morning, when the walk-off single happens and Arkansas wins the game, rallies to beat Florida and clinches the SEC. And that place was jumping. I mean, there's more people in left. There's more people sitting in left field at Arkansas Friday night's game than most SEC teams draw in the season. And some of them draw for certainly in a game, but some of them draw in a season. And that place was jumping. And I've been there when it's jumping, and I've been a visiting team there when it's jumping, and I've been in super regionals and regionals there. And that place can really get crazy. And it got really crazy Friday night. Never felt like they're out of the game. I never felt like they're out of the game. Robert Moore bangs one off that performance building in right field, hits the second deck, ties the game in the 8th, and they bring Cops in the 9th. And, that's how Van Horn knows what's going on. And Coach's like, nope, we're bringing him in a tie game. He's going to strike out 3 guys, and we're going to find a way to win the game in the bottom of the 9th. And that's what they did. Opitz hit a double that Fabian misplayed into a triple, ended up being a double and an error. And then Florida brings in the infield, brings in an outfielder, 5-man infield. They got 2 outfielders and the pinch hitter, finds one, hits one over their heads. But that's just a resilient team. That whole weekend, just totally electric in Fayetteville. The regionals, super regionals be the same way. And hats off to Tennessee going on the road, beating a good South Carolina team, 2 out of 3 to win the East. Tough break for Vanderbilt. I thought it was strike 3 as well. I agreed with Maldonado, but then you still got to come back and make the pitches, and he didn't. And Kessler hit him for a 3-run homer, and then Plastiak hit a 2-run homer, and all of a sudden Vanderbilt goes from 2nd to 4th seed in the tournament. And then I thought, Ole Miss got it done on the road, 2 out of 3 at Georgia. LSU gutted out a game Friday night, a 13-inning game Friday night, and takes the series with the Aggies and clinches their spot in the tournament. And, Auburn, winning 2 out of 3 at Missouri. I think this Auburn team was 1-11, and they went 9-9 the rest of the way, and got into the SEC tournament. I don't think any of us thought Auburn was going to be in the SEC tournament 4 or 5 weeks ago, but they did. And they gutted out a series at Missouri and got in, and made a run at the end to, get to Hoover and at least give them a shot. And so I think that's some of the keys from the weekend, the last weekend of the season. It was some really good, entertaining, compelling baseball games.
Couple more things before we get to predictions. That Ole Miss series was one that I kind of had my eye on. Ole Miss now 18-12. I think the Rebels are a solid host. South Carolina, my goodness. I'll get into the Gamecocks in a bit, but I think one more win, and Carolina is probably joining the hosting party, but it didn't happen. I think Tennessee was going to be a national seed anyway. Certainly it bolstered its case with that. LSU, you would have liked to have seen for the league a sweep there, but they get 2 out of 3. 13-17. That's going to be an interesting one going into Hoover. We'll talk about them as we get into the bracket. Alabama got swept at home against Mississippi State. I think the Tide, really barring a dramatic run in Hoover, are on the outside looking in. And Georgia is going to be another interesting one, again, on the flip side of that series with Ole Miss. Georgia wins the final game in pretty dramatic fashion. And Kentucky sort of in the same shape. Kentucky probably needed a couple wins in Nashville to get on the fringe of the discussion, but I really came away impressed with the Wildcats, especially a couple of kids in TJ Collette and Colton Kessler, who I'd not gotten to see in person. my opinion, those guys as players, I think really took a step up this weekend after seeing them in person. So anyway, let's get into Hoover, Barry. I think we're going to go through and we're going to predict the games. Let's start in bracket one, where that early game, 9:30 on Tuesday morning, Florida faces Kentucky, and where you know anything about the pitching matchups, feel free to interject because I think at this point most of us are flying blind. But Florida, Kentucky will be an interesting one. Florida has had a lot of issues with game one pitching. Again, Kentucky going down there, really needing to win that game. Cole Stupp as a kid, I presume we'll see in game one. He was a game one pitcher all year. He's a kid who gets a lot of ground balls. He is a guy who can throw a lot of innings. And Kentucky, I think, really found maybe some pitching options this weekend in Nashville with some soft tossers who really kept Vanderbilt off balance for a good bit. So this one may be a little bit more interesting going into this weekend than I would have pegged it had the two teams, say, played a week or two ago. And, oh, by the way, if you're wondering about the regular season series, Florida takes 2 of 3 in Lexington. Of course, the Gators struggled on the road, but did manage to win 2 there. How do you size this one up? Who do you have in this one?
Well, they did play a couple of weeks ago. Florida won 2 out of 3. Very easily could have lost 2 out of 3. They were down to their last strike in the second game of the series and got a pinch hit single and then got a home run and ended up winning the game and then won the game on Sunday to take the series. I think some of these are kind of hard to pick, not knowing what some of these teams are going to do pitching wise. I think Florida's in good shape to host. I think they're a top 16. I don't know that Florida has to win this game. I don't know that it will affect them in a lot of ways. If they don't win, I think Kentucky is one of the teams. Well, I think Kentucky and Alabama and Auburn, the only chance they have of making the NCAA tournaments, they have to win the tournament in Hoover. I mean, they got to win it. They're not going to get there with 4 wins, 4-1, 3-2, whatever. I don't think any of those 3 teams have any chance unless they win in Hoover. So I think Kentucky's got to give it their all. I just think Florida's better than them. They're veteran team, and they know how to win here. So I am going with the Gators in game 1 at 9:30 tomorrow to win over Kentucky and advance to play Mississippi State on Wednesday morning.
I'm also going with the Gators. Let's go to game 2, South Carolina and Alabama. Oh, man, I'm stubbornly going to stay on the Carolina bandwagon here. Now, Alabama does have a couple of arms in Tyler Ross and Dylan Smith who can go deep into games, but I just think once you get into the bullpen, although I think both teams will be fine for game 1, but I just like the top end of Carolina's pitching better. Now, Carolina really struggling to score runs, but I don't know. To me, I think Carolina is the team that I'm taking in that one.
Yeah, you mentioned Ross and Smith. Both of those guys pitched Thursday and Friday for Alabama and threw over 100 pitches in the game. I would be shocked if either of those guys pitch in this game for Alabama. I would not be surprised if we get our obligatory 1 inning of Connor Prelip and then roll from there. But Alabama used a lot of arms this weekend, particularly on Saturday. Chase Lee was upwards of 50 pitches, although they brought him in a game where they were not ahead, and it got further behind because their defense let them down in the final game against Mississippi State. I could see South Carolina running Sanders out there. He didn't throw much this weekend against Tennessee. I could see them starting him. South Carolina is in the tournament. I think they're still trying to play for one of those last host spots. I don't know that they're going to get it, but they will get a win over Alabama tomorrow in the tournament.
Do you think Alabama throws Landon Green? Because he was the guy that I figured they'd start game 3 against State. They went Jacob McNary instead. Green did throw in relief. He threw 20 pitches. But to me, that might be the guy you throw down there. I mean, I think they could probably wrap up, William Freeman, Connor Shamlin guys if they can throw a lot in relief. I think that Alabama has probably got enough to pace the pitching together in game one, especially against a Carolina team that just has not hit very well. And when it does hit, it's the long ball that gets it done for the Gamecocks. Well, that's not the park you want to play in if that's your game. So I still think Carolina wins, but I think Alabama's got enough pitching maybe to make it interesting still.
I think Landon Green might be a thought, but he was so bad on Saturday. I mean, really bad. They brought him in a tough situation they're ahead, and I don't think he got anybody out. I think he walked a couple. I think they messed up a bunt. I mean, it was not a very good outing for Landon Green, and I think he and Alabama's coaching staff would tell you that they expect better and get better from Landon Green more times than not. But I think with that bad taste in their mouth, I don't know that they would want to run him back out there to start. I don't think they would not pitch him, but I don't know that they'd run him out there to start. It was really interesting Saturday. They started Jacob Maneri, who hadn't pitched since April. He'd been injured. Really interesting. Cut Mississippi State up for 2 innings, and then they took him out. And they brought in Connor Shamlin, and he had a couple of decent innings and then ran into some trouble. And then they went to Landon Green, and he couldn't get out of the inning. And then they went to Chase Lee, and he got out of the inning. And then the next inning, he got into some trouble with some errors. And Mississippi State scored all 7 of their runs in the 5th and 6th inning against Shamlin, Green, and Lee. And then, they took Lee out after 8 innings and 60 some odd pitches. So I'd be worried about him throwing a little bit tomorrow, with just 60 pitches and just 2 days rest. But didn't use him Thursday night, in a game they could have won, and obviously didn't need him Friday night because they got beat. But they do have some options, but, right now their pitching has not exactly been the big story for them of late, going 1-7 in the last 3 weekends. They've had some issues on the mound, and that really stood out this weekend against Mississippi State.
And in case you're wondering, those 2 teams, Alabama and South Carolina, did not play in the regular season. So we have no history this year to go on. Okay, so we're going to move South Carolina into the Wednesday game with Tennessee. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's go to bracket 2. You've got Georgia is facing LSU, a game that both teams really need a win there. In the regular season, let's see, those teams did not play, so we have no history to judge on. Georgia running thin on pitching with all the injuries. LSU, I think, a little more equipped to probably get more innings out of a starting pitcher. I'm presuming they're going to go Landon Marceau, and I say that, but LSU pulls Marceau after he's a little bit tired. I don't know. I think LSU's got more firepower left over in the lineup, I think, with Cruz and Morgan and Dugas and Dowdy and some of those kids. Georgia has got some good bats in the Tates and Josh McAllister and some guys like that. But I don't know. I just think, to me, I think LSU's got a little bit more in the tank at this point than perhaps Georgia does. But what do you think here?
Yeah, and I also think this is probably the most intriguing game of day one because it is the game where both teams are fighting to get into tournament, the NCAA tournament. I think the winner of this game might have a leg up, for that 8th spot to get in the NCAA regional. Both are 13-17 in the league. Georgia's 30-23 overall. LSU's 34-21 overall. Georgia won the last game of the regular season. LSU's won 2 in a row, 4 out of 6, and 6 out of their last 9. To get where they are. And LSU is a 21 in the RPI this morning, where Georgia's 41. So that tells me that and Georgia dropped 3 spots this weekend. LSU's also dropped 3 spots this weekend. So that tells me that LSU is in a little better shape than Georgia. So if Georgia's going to make an NCAA tournament run, they have to win this game, but I don't think they will. I think LSU has more firepower on offense. I think that park is built for LSU. Their gap guys can hit the ball out of the park, but they also have a lot of doubles guys. And I think that park is built for LSU. I think LSU likes Hoover. I think LSU expects to win in Hoover. I think they have this incredible record. I think they played it was Ole Miss and Vandy played in the finals a couple of years ago. But I think LSU's won like 85% of the games in the tournament under Maneri, and I think they feel very comfortable there. And I see LSU winning this game and knocking Georgia out of a possible NCAA bid and maybe cinching one for themselves, with this game on Tuesday in Hoover.
Yeah, we see that one alike. So we're going to advance LSU to face Arkansas on Wednesday. Ole Miss and Auburn. That'll be an interesting one. The two teams did play. Ole Miss swept that one in Oxford, but that was back on the first weekend of the season. Auburn playing better since then. Of course, Ole Miss had Gunnar Hoagland. Does not have him now. Auburn has picked it up in the pitching department. Jack Owen has thrown better. You've seen some guys for the Tigers start to step it up. No, the pitching situation's still not great for them, but hasn't been for Ole Miss, frankly, either. That said, I think Ole Miss is going to throw Doug Nikhazy in game one, and to me, that makes a massive difference because I think once you get him on the hill versus everybody else they've got, I think that makes as big a difference at maybe having him pitching as it does for any team in the league anywhere. So if Nikhazy throws, I really like Ole Miss to take that one.
The first thing that you mentioned, they played obviously in the regular season because they're in the same division. They played the first weekend. The first two games were one-run games. Ole Miss won on a pinch hit home run Friday night in the bottom of the eighth inning, 1-0, as it was Hoagland outdueled Cody Greenhill in a game where both pitchers struck out like 19 or 20 batters in 15 innings. And Ole Miss won on a pinch hit home run, 1-0. They won another one-run game on Saturday and then blew Auburn out on Sunday. It was ended up being 19-11, but it was 14-0 at one point in that game. If Nikhazy pitches, that's a deal breaker. I mean, nobody's going to beat him. And haven't this year. I mean, they're 8-1. Ole Miss is 8-1 in his 9 SEC starts. He did not pitch against Auburn. That was the only SEC weekend he missed. So that would be some unfamiliarity with Auburn. We haven't seen him. So anybody Auburn runs out there, Ole Miss has seen because, goodness knows in that game on Sunday, both teams pitched everybody in a 19-11 game. So Auburn's going to be a little less familiar with Nikhazy. I don't know. I don't have any insight. I don't know. I would think they would pitch him. They may not, just because if they can get by Auburn with somebody else, then they got Nikhazy for Vanderbilt on Wednesday in the Wednesday night game, and he cut them up. He pitched pretty well against well, he did. No, it was him and Rocker, and he beat Rocker 3-1 in the opener in game one a couple of weeks ago. So I just not knowing who they're going to pitch kind of makes it hard, but I don't think Auburn's going to beat Ole Miss in this game, and I think both teams are going to have tremendous crowds. It's going to be the night game. I think there'll be a lot of Ole Miss fans there. I think it'll be a lot of Auburn fans there. I think it'll be a really good crowd, but I think Ole Miss is going to win.
Okay, let's go back up to the top of bracket one where we've got Mississippi State matched up with Florida. State will have no shortage of pitching options, however it goes. I don't know what Florida will have at that point. Probably to me, the big thing is when do they throw Hunter Barco? Because he's been their best starter. I think if it's Barco in that game, I could see that one getting interesting. If it's not, boy, I don't know. State to me is a team that could be a bad matchup for Florida. They take a lot of walks. Florida's had some pitching issues at times. Those two teams did not play in the regular season, which it seems like we're saying that a lot as these teams match up. But I just think State, to me, feels like a team that's really built for that park more so than does Florida.
And they're going to have the crowd advantage. Even at 9:30 in the morning, there's going to be more Mississippi State fans there than there are Florida. I don't know what State will do pitching-wise. Fristow started on Saturday in the series finale with Alabama. He was not good. They took him out, and after 2 innings, and Houston Harding came in. And I'm going to tell you, that guy was as good to me as the two guys they ran out there, McLeod and Bednar on Thursday and Friday night. I mean, this guy was really good. He's a veteran guy, left-hander, Gave up a leadoff single to the first man he faced, got out of the inning with a double play, retired the first 15, ran into a little trouble in the 8th. They had to go to Preston Johnson to get out of the bases loaded jam in the 8th. He got an out, the only batter he faced, and then they turned the game over to Landon Sims. So I'm not sure what they'll do pitching wise. I would be kind of surprised if McLeod or Bednar pitches before Thursday or Friday. So I think Mississippi State will have somebody else in that game. That could be a Tommy Mace game for Florida. And then maybe Barco on Thursday. But I like Mississippi State in this game offensively because of Jordan and Allen. They're, a lot of doubles. That's a doubles ballpark. They're going to have the crowd behind them. So I got Mississippi State moving on into Thursday with a 1-0 record after a win over Florida.
Okay, now we get to Tennessee and South Carolina. That'll be the second game on Wednesday morning, maybe Wednesday afternoon by the time they start, probably will be. That one, a series that just got played in South Carolina, pretty competitive, but the Vols go into Founders Park and take 2. South Carolina is a team that I've just wanted to believe in, but my patience is running thin with those guys.
Yeah, and Tennessee, Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt, to me, are already locks for national seeds, and Hoover, I don't think, can do anything to hurt that. So how do these teams approach these games? Are you going to use your guys? Are you just going to bullpen these games, use some midweek guys? And if you get to Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, then okay, we got Heflin and Tidwell and the first guy, Chad Dallas. Sorry, Chad. You just escaped me there. And then we got these guys for the weekend. That's the thing that you just, obviously you can't know who they're going to pitch and what they're going to do. I think South Carolina has to go for it. I think they have to beat Alabama. I think they have to run Brett Carey out in game 2 or Brandon Jordan out in game 2 and go for it. But I in this situation, I think Tennessee will win and they will advance to play Mississippi State in a very intriguing game on Thursday.
If Tennessee throws Chad Dallas in that spot, I think he's really good in that park. Let me just give you some numbers on him. This year in SEC play, he struck out 76 and walked 12, but he had a 4.57 ERA. I'll give you one guess why that was, Barry Allen.
He had one bad outing.
He had 13 home runs allowed. And the ball is going to get out a lot faster in Lindsey Nelson Stadium than it is in Hoover.
Yeah.
So I think a guy that commands his stuff that well, I think is going to get rewarded in that park. He hit 5 batters this year, so 17 free passes in 63 innings. That's not a lot. 3 wild pitches. Now that could come into play because there's eons of foul territory down there behind home plate, but that's not a lot. I just think that Chad Dallas is a kid who probably, I'm going to guess his stuff translates better in that park, significantly more so than it does in his own.
Yeah, they'll get a lot of protection there in Hoover. The ball is supposed to be, for those of you that are going, please hydrate because it is supposed to be really, really hot here this week. We're talking like 95, 96. And if there's not a breeze there, that ball's not going anywhere in that park, and it can get really, really hot in the Hoover Met, especially if you're down low around the dugouts, you're seated down there in the box seats and stuff. It can get really, really, really hot and really, really, really muggy, and it could be hard to get some balls out of there. But, fans that are going, take precaution and hydrate because it's going to be a really warm week, hottest week we've had all year in Alabama. It's going to be really warm, and that could benefit some teams. Balls staying in the park, and a guy like Dallas who gives up a ton of home runs, that could really work into his favor.
This is this may be a little bit out there, but I do wonder too, and with the fabrics now that they have in uniforms, maybe they can figure this out. But I'm thinking you probably want to be wearing the white jerseys down in Hoover rather than the dark ones, and that's what the home team gets to wear.
Yeah, I would think that would help. Something light. I mean, they're probably lighter than they used to be, but yeah, I would think that the dark jerseys, the black jerseys that Vandy and Mississippi State sometimes roll out, would not be conducive at 1:30 in the afternoon for some of those games.
Yeah, I think you maybe roll out your grays instead of your blacks in that point. So let's look at the next game. We've got Arkansas and LSU. That's scheduled for 4:30 on Wednesday, if that is indeed the matchup. Of course, Arkansas already going to be in that game. We were presuming that LSU beats Georgia. In the regular season, those teams played, and Arkansas took 2 of 3 at LSU. Pitching has been the question with Arkansas all year. I presume they'll throw Wicklander. Again, we don't know what LSU does. LSU does have some starting pitching options here, so I think this could be a sneaky good game. But just given the way those two teams played all year, Arkansas just hard to bet against under most circumstances, and I don't know that unless maybe you get a Landon Marceau in that spot and he's more rested than he was last week, to me that's LSU's best shot. Maybe you catch A.J. Labus on a good day, but if Marceau's throwing, I think this one could be interesting. But if he's not, and boy, especially once you get into the bullpen where LSU has struggled, other than maybe Garrett Edwards, who's been pretty good, I just think this is a problematic matchup maybe for LSU, unless they get Marceau out there and he goes really deep into the game.
Yeah, I mean, like when you get into this, I mean, not knowing who these guys are going to pitch, I mean, this is all a crapshoot trying to figure out, who's going to win these games. I don't know that Arkansas pitches Wicklander before Friday or Saturday. I don't think Vanderbilt's going to throw Rocker or Leiter before Friday or Saturday. And if they get to Friday and Saturday, then guess what? We got our best guys. And if we don't get to Friday and Saturday, well, okay, we'll go home and we'll rest and we'll wait for next Monday's selection shows. But I would take Arkansas in this game. I went with 3 of the 4 favorites on Tuesday. I picked LSU as the lower seed to beat Georgia. I am 3 for 3 now in the higher seeded teams winning, on Tuesday and advancing and I don't want to get ahead of you, but I probably will stay that same way in the next bracket too. Just having those teams a day of rest and extra day of rest and winning and getting into that, I would put Arkansas in the winners bracket game after in a win over LSU.
Okay, so now we get to Vanderbilt and Ole Miss, which again a little hard to figure. I'm hearing Nikhazy again probably throws in the opener, and if that's the case, huge drop off to McDaniel or Diamond or whoever the Rebels would throw at that point. Vanderbilt, I'm going to guess Vanderbilt goes with Christian Little, who's been its midweek guy. That makes sense in that spot. Little's had some issues with the long ball. Stuff's really good, but he's been uneven. Those two teams played a slugfest in a game 3 a couple of weeks ago, which I think is maybe one of your more comparable comparisons in terms of what you'll see in this one. But I don't know, this one interesting to me. Vanderbilt, a team that's had a lot of health issues. Frankly, Vanderbilt, as much as anybody, just needs to leave that place healthy. But Tim Corbin has always played to win down there. So what are we thinking with this one, Barry?
Well, I'm going to take the top 4 seeds in all these games on Wednesday. I may miss all these. I may be 0-8 when we go home Tuesday night, or Wednesday night, and that's fine. We're just trying to pick, figure out who's going to win this thing. But I'm going to take Vanderbilt over Ole Miss in this game to win and advance and have Vanderbilt play in Arkansas in one of the games on Thursday, which I think will be a really intriguing matchup.
Okay, that means we're going back to the top of bracket 1, which becomes the losers bracket. We have got Florida matched up with South Carolina. When those two teams played in the regular season, Carolina swept. That was in Columbia. That was early in the season. I just like Carolina's pitching depth at this point. Again, the wild card could be whether Hunter Barco has thrown to this point or not. When I think he was I think he was there 2 at season's end. So if they follow in form, I guess Barco would have thrown at that point. But what's your guess on who we see those days and who takes this one?
I don't know who we'll see pitching wise, but I think it's hard to beat somebody 4 times in a row in this league. And South Carolina swept Florida this year, so I would take Florida to win this game just because I don't think they could lose 4 times in a row to the same team in the same year. I'm gonna play the odds, and I'm gonna take the Gators in this one.
Okay, I think to me that one's a toss-up. I think Carolina's got better pitching, but again, can you score runs down there? And that's just been an issue for Carolina pretty much everywhere of late.
Well, it's been an issue for them in Hoover too, and they typically don't play well in Hoover. They just, when Ray Tanner was there and they were hosting in national seeds and going to Omaha every year, there were a lot of years they were 2-out. I mean, this is just not a place that South Carolina has played well. And you see them and you see them leave and you're like, wow, that's just not a very good team. And I think the last time they were here, they went 2-out, and it's just not built for them for whatever reason, and they just haven't had a lot of success here. And Florida's usually around on Friday and Saturday, and I just think Florida losing 3 times to South Carolina during the regular season, I don't think they're going to lose a 4th time.
Okay, so we've got LSU and Ole Miss at the top of that bracket in an elimination game. That would be the morning game on Thursday. Strange to say, I think LSU might have a little more pitching left at that point, although maybe not. That'll be game 3. I mean, that one, LSU's pitching right now. What they'll take into this weekend, just a mystery. Ole Miss is not so much at that point. To me, it'll be whether Ole Miss can find a long guy like a Diamond or a McDaniel who can get hot, which has happened at times, right? Both really good hitting teams. Ole Miss probably a better, not probably. Ole Miss definitely a better hitting team, and maybe at that point, with the arms getting worn thin, you tilt to the offense in that spot, Barry.
Yeah, this could be a Mikael Hilliard game, and he's been really good for LSU the last 3 weeks. I mean, he pitched well against Arkansas, beat Arkansas, he beat Alabama, he beat Texas A&M. He's 3-0 in his last 3 starts, 4-0 really because he won a midweek game before he pitched against Arkansas. So he's 4-0 in his last 4 starts, 3 SEC wins. This could be a Mikael Hilliard game, and he could give Ole Miss some trouble. He was not in the rotation when they played in Oxford a few weeks ago. LSU won 2 out of 3, but had that tremendous meltdown in game 3 on Saturday where they led 9-1 and lost 10-9 on the Kemp Alderman home run in the bottom of the 9th after Ole Miss scored 8 runs in the bottom of the 8th to tie the game. So if Hilliard's there, it could be some problems for Ole Miss, but I think Ole Miss outlasts them, and I think Ole Miss wins this game.
Okay, Hilliard's last 4 appearances, he's gone 5+ in all of them. He's given up 1 run twice, 2 runs once, and 3 runs once. So doesn't walk a lot of guys. He's walked 4 guys across those starts. He has struck out 18. That one is more interesting than I would have anticipated. Does that change your thinking at all?
No, not really. No. I just like Ole Miss. I think they play well here. They have a good crowd. I think LSU plays fairly. They've had a lot of success here too. But I think Ole Miss will win this game.
Okay, so we'll send Ole Miss to the winner's bracket, send LSU home. You now get down to the winner's bracket. You got Mississippi State and Tennessee in what should be a fascinating game. Again, those 2 teams did not play during the regular season. I don't know, Barry, my feeling in this one is Tennessee. I think Tennessee's got a lot of guys who can throw a lot of innings. Now, they might not be, stars and guys that we have at the top of the conversation, but one hallmark of Tennessee's pitching staff, they have a lot of guys who can give them quality innings. I like Tennessee's offense better. Tennessee, I think, will be motivated to play and win this one. I think it'll be a terrific game, but I'm not going to say hard for me to see Tennessee winning, but I see Tennessee having an edge going into this one. Runs scored on the year, Vols 200 in league play, State 169, runs allowed, Tennessee 141, State 146. So Tennessee actually pitched and hit better in the SEC, better than did the Bulldogs. I'm kind of liking the numbers here in Tennessee's favor.
Yeah, they've had a really good year, but I'm gonna take Mississippi State in this game. A lot of kids from Alabama on their team. They'll have the crowd in their favor. 4:30 in the afternoon, they'll be juiced up. The Bulldogs will. They'll have a lot of people there, and I think Mississippi State will win this game.
I'm going to go against you there. So that's where we're going to. I've gone with you to this point. LSU Ole Miss was one that I had some issues with, but you talked me into it. So we're going to putting Mississippi State in that game, and I'll have Tennessee in that game. So we'll circle back to that later. Then you get to Arkansas Vandy, and I think of all the matchups that didn't happen this year, Barry, that might be the one people want to see more than any.
Yeah, I think everybody's saying, please God, give us Arkansas and Vandy in the SEC tournament. And the way we've got it picked, that's where I'm going. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of spoil things here at the end a little bit, but I'm going to have Vanderbilt win this game, and then they're going to meet in a rematch. I think they rematch. Would they not? Or does Arkansas flip brackets? I forget how this bracket is so dumb. I've never liked this bracket. And that's a story for another day. This bracket is so hard to figure out because I'm following along with you and I'm lost. I don't even know what day we're on right now, and I don't even know what game we're in. Because this bracket is so hard to figure out. It's so dumb.
Okay, here's what I've got.
So we got Arkansas Vandy in game 12. So that winner goes. Yeah, they flip.
The loser of Arkansas Vanderbilt is going to play Ole Miss on a Friday game where loser goes home.
Okay. They flip brackets and stuff, and I don't like that. I understand why they do it because they don't want to play the same teams over and over again, but it gets so confusing. And then they play single elimination for 3 days and double elimination for 3 days, and you have to try to figure out what is single elimination and what is double elimination, and where you're pitching out. But that's a conversation for another day about how this tournament could be different and how it could be better. But it confuses me. But I'm gonna pick Vanderbilt to win this game, and they'll advance to play somebody, and Arkansas is going to lose this game, and then they'll advance to play somebody, and I think they play Ole Miss, the Ole Miss LSU winner. You said,
yeah,
that's Friday,
right?
Okay, so I'm gonna take Vanderbilt in this game, and they'll be playing Saturday in the semifinals.
Okay, I'm going to go with you on that one too, just because I think Vanderbilt could be throwing rocker or lighter at that point. Arkansas, I don't know what it'll be. So let's go back to the top where we both have Florida there. You have Tennessee in that game. I have State in that game. Let's match up both scenarios. Florida, Tennessee. That one was played in Knoxville. That was played the fourth week in the season. The Vols took 2 or 3, and I think that's when Tennessee really started to pop on the national radar a little bit more. I think that was one that gave Tennessee a lot of confidence. I just see Tennessee being better on the pitching side at that point. I see the Vols having the better offense. To me, if it's Florida, Tennessee, I like the Vols on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Mississippi State, so I guess it's Florida and Mississippi State. Is that where we are?
Well, no, you have – because Tennessee is the loser in your scenario, so they would be getting Florida.
Oh, so it's – okay, so Tennessee, Florida. Yeah, I would say Tennessee would win this game over Florida.
Yeah, so you're going to take Tennessee to win that game, which will set up the matchup there in a minute. I'm going to take State to win that game. Either way, we've got the Gators going home. You go to the bottom half of the bracket. You've got Ole Miss and Arkansas on a Friday matchup. I don't know how much pitching either team's got at this point. Barry, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I'm going to put Arkansas winning this game. Tennessee beats Florida, and Arkansas beats Ole Miss on Friday and advances into Saturday. Because I have a method for who I think is going to win this, and I got to move Arkansas forward. So I don't want to spoil it, but that's where I'm going there. I think Arkansas will win. They'll probably have more weekend guys available at this point, and then they'll have Kevin Kopps, because once they get into this, I think they're going to want to win, and I think that will be the difference in the game.
Okay, so now we have got, let's see, Tennessee and Mississippi State at the top. Depending on who you picked, you've got the Vols in that spot. I've got State in that spot. Either way, the matchup is the same, ironically, despite us differing in outcomes at that point. So we both have Tennessee and Mississippi State at this point. How do you see that one matching up? By now, both teams have burned through some pitching. So to me, it's on the bats, and I just like Tennessee's offense better at this point.
Yeah, their offense is really good. So is State's, but I think State's pitching staff is just deeper. I'm going to go with the Vols here in this semifinal game and advance them to the finals, just with a little bit more oomph, because now we're back into single elimination now on Saturday. So if you lose, you're out, just like Tuesday. So with Tennessee winning, they don't have to beat Mississippi State twice, and that's a big advantage. And I'm going to push the Vols into the championship game on Sunday.
Okay, we both got the Vols there, and then we've got Arkansas and Vandy in a game everybody's going to be watching. Loser goes home. Vanderbilt will not have lost at that point. Arkansas will have lost one, and so have played one more game. Let's see, Vanderbilt at that point, I'm going to presume, will have thrown Christian Little on Wednesday. Will have thrown Kumar Rocker on Thursday, setting up maybe Jack Leiter for Saturday. So you got Arkansas TBD against Leiter, perhaps in that spot, which would seem to tilt the pitching Vanderbilt's way.
It would seem to, but I think this Arkansas team, that's the one thing Arkansas has never done, and they've never won this tournament. They've been to the finals a couple of times. They lost to Alabama in 99, Auburn in 98, LSU a couple of years ago. They have never won this tournament. And this team has done things a lot of Arkansas teams hasn't done, and I think this team itself is going to look at that and go, we've never won here, and I'm going to go Arkansas in this game and play in Tennessee Sunday in the finals. And I guess a little spoiler there, but I think I thought that was the greatest series of the year between Tennessee and Arkansas, and I'm looking forward to seeing the finals on Sunday. And that's kind of boring because that's 1-2, and I'm not typically a 1-2 kind of guy, but that's just how it kind of works out.
Yeah, and I think at that point, again, it gets down to what kind of pitching you have left. The park is going to play a little differently there. Tennessee takes a ton of walks and doesn't give up a lot. And I'm wondering how much that factors into what we see. In fact, I want to look at some numbers in league play. Give me a moment to pull those up. Or maybe for the season is a better way to look at it, because at that point you're going to get into midweek arms, right? Tennessee has taken 298 walks on the season. Arkansas has taken 290, so two both very patient teams. In terms of what they've given up, Tennessee's only walked 142. Arkansas's walked 181. Tennessee, I think, is going to be in better pitching shape at that point. But Arkansas didn't lose a lot of games in the midweek either, Barry.
No, they had a lot of success, Tuesdays and Wednesdays and the weekends and all that too. But Arkansas has never won this tournament. We're not going to be able to say that next week. I think they're going to win it. Everybody goes, well, that's really boring. Yeah, well, it probably is, because I had the top four teams in the Final Four and the 1 and the 2 team in the championship game, but that's just kind of how it works out. When they flip the brackets around, that kind of messes it up. You have to play different teams, and that gets you back into that mix again. But I'm picking them to win it. I really thought they'd win the SEC this year, certainly the West. I wasn't sure they'd win the whole thing, but I thought they would win the West. They did. They won the whole thing. And I just think this is something that they've not done. And I think it's something that they're going to say, we never won this tournament. Let's be that team. We've been that team to do everything else. Let's be that team. And that's why I'm picking Arkansas.
Arkansas also led the SEC with home runs in all games. So that was a lineup that really seemed to feast on weaker pitching. Although, again, the ballpark kind of normalizes some of that down there in Hoover. But in any case, Arkansas, if we're right about this, is really hoping on precedent, because the last time we had this event, Barry, the regular season champion also won the tournament and went on to win the whole thing as well. So that would be a very interesting storyline if this plays out the way that we've got it on paper.
Well, Arkansas is highly capable of doing it all. I mean, they're highly capable of winning this tournament and the regional, the super regional, and they're highly capable of going to Omaha. You got to have a lot of luck. You got to be good, but you got to have some luck to go with it. And this might be that year for them. They had a tremendous regular season, and they got Kevin Kopps, and nobody else does. They got the one X factor that nobody else has. I don't think they pitch him every day. And like I said, we're doing this for fun. This is hard to try to know. I mean, who's going to win a game on Friday? You don't even know who's going to play on Friday. I mean, we may miss all these. We don't know who's going to pitch tomorrow for some teams. We don't know who's going to pitch Wednesday for some teams. We don't even know if these top 4 teams are going to pitch any of their good pitchers at all. I mean, I told you last week, when Alabama won this thing in 1999, I mean, we pitched 2 guys on Wednesday and Thursday that hadn't pitched all year long. We started Jason Moats and beat Ole Miss, and then threw Kevin Marzi on against Mississippi State. And I saw Ron Polk Friday. Alabama had a day off, and they were playing. And I saw him, and he goes, "Jim Wells is a genius." And I go, "Why you say that?" And he goes, "Pitched a guy we didn't even have a scouting report on." He said, "We didn't even know what he threw." He said, "We had like 5 innings." He said, "We didn't call that team. We didn't think you were going to use him." And he said, "Took us a few innings to figure him out, and then you brought your closer in, and then the game was over." So, so it just have teams that do that. It just, Tennessee didn't pitch Wyatt Allen in 2001. I think they won the SEC and hosted and went to Omaha, and I think they were 2-out in Hoover because Rod Delmonico didn't put a lot of emphasis on that because he wanted to win the regional. And South Carolina, how all those years Ray Tanner had regional and Omaha and national championship teams. I think, they were way under 500 in the SEC. So you really don't know what kind of stock these teams are going to put in this. I do know that all the teams that play on Tuesday, maybe with the exception of Ole Miss and Florida, are going to go all out to try to win this, because I feel like they have to. I don't think Ole Miss and Florida have to. I don't think those top 4 seeds on Wednesday have to win this, but somebody's going to win it. And we're doing a little fun exercise here today to try to figure out who it is. And, I think it's going to be Arkansas. And I may be totally wrong. They may lose Wednesday and Thursday and go home, and they may be just happy with that. But it's a fun little exercise for us, and that's kind of how I drew my conclusion. But I think they're going to do something that no other Arkansas team has done, like they've done all year.
Well, it'll be a fun event. I'll be down there for, I think, all of it. I may be back Saturday night just because that's a long week down there, and I've got a lot to get ready for next week. But in any case, I'll be in Hoover. We will figure out this podcast thing. We're not quite sure where we're going to go with it next in terms of our coverage from down there, but it becomes dated pretty quickly. But in any case, we'll have something for you. We'll have plenty of content at the website. So go to southeastern14.com. You can find our All-SEC teams, which have gotten a lot of debate. We've got our superlatives for Player of the Year, Pitcher of the Year, Coach of the Year, Freshman of the Year. You can check those out at southeastern14.com. Much more to come. Follow us on Twitter at 14 Southeastern. Anyway, I'm your host, Chris Lee. We will have much more coverage from Hoover. Thank you for listening. We'll be back with another episode, or we should be back with another episode on Tuesday.